here in Rutherford County, so we've got a lot of people coming in and out, but welcome. And first order of business, I'm gonna call on Commissioner Paul Johnson, if you would, for approval of our minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I reviewed the minutes and find them in order and move for approval.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is public comments, and I've been informed that no one has signed up or requested public comments tonight. So we're going to quickly move on to our investment report and ask Mr. Beatty to come forward.
Beatty, the Rutherford County trustee. We didn't have any bids this month, so our LGIP rate was 5.33, our money market rate was 5.71, and our regular banking rate was 4.95.
Very healthy, right?
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve the report.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions for Mr. Beatty? Hear none. All in favor of his motion here signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next thing on our agenda is to discuss the tax freeze, and this is new legislation that has actually changed the level of amount that the individuals, homeowners can make. And Mr. Beatty's kindly said he would help us start off on this discussion. Please, Ted.
I will. So there are two programs, and I'll kind of remind everyone, we have a tax relief program. That's a state program that actually pays part of a homeowner's taxes each year. And we have a match in Rutherford County. We match what the state pays, $2 for one, up to a total match of $306. And we've had that for a number of years, and that income level is in the upper 30s to qualify for that. And then we have the senior tax freeze. Now, the tax relief, there's a disabled veterans, total and permanent disabled veterans, and there's no income limit for veterans to qualify or their surviving spouses. For totally disabled homeowners, can qualify for this program, and then for seniors over 65. And then the tax freeze is only for seniors 65 or older, and that program freezes your taxes at a base rate. At the year you qualify the first time, and as long as you continue to qualify, that tax amount becomes your base. And so with a reappraisal or a tax increase, you won't pay above that base year amount. If, and this has happened in reappraisal, your taxes actually decline, then it would refreeze at that lower amount. So you would benefit, that would become your base going forward. And so we've had that program, and the income limit for each county is either the tax relief amount or the average household income for homeowners 65 or older within the county. And so that's where we've been, because ours is above the tax relief amount. So our income for seniors has been, for this year, using 2022 income for the 2023 tax year, $47,570. This year in the legislature, it was passed that a county or a municipality could adopt a $60,000 income limit. Now, it's either the amount as specified originally or 60,000. There's not anywhere in between. It's in either or. You can increase that amount to $60,000, and then that would become effective next year. So if the commission adopts that, let's say this month, then starting in 2024, that would become the base year. We'd start taking applications next year. That would become the base year, and it would affect our tax roll possibly starting in 2025 for those new applicants. One other point, that $60,000 does adjust each year for inflation. So as the Social Security increases, so does this amount. And that's been true for both of these programs. So if tonight, or this month, I'll just say, the commission were to adopt 60,000, when we actually start implementing that next year, it will be a little bit above 60,000 to adjust for inflation. But that's how, and so then the next year it would adjust a little more. And it's really designed so that individuals who are on Social Security, that any increase in Social Security doesn't knock them off the program, that the income limit at least goes up enough to make sure that their increases in Social Security doesn't knock them off the program. So I think the proposal is just to move from the 47,570 to 60,000. Again, it would become effective in the 2024 tax years. So if you were to implement, we would actually start taking applications next summer. It would not affect the tax roll, the taxes that have already gone out. 2023, it would have no impact. It would actually start, and that would become then the base year.
I'm going to ask Ted to stick around for a few minutes because we're probably
I'll be glad to.
going to have several questions. I know I have a couple of questions and comments myself. Michael, before I open the floor to everybody, do you want to add anything to this at the moment?
I agree with everything Mr. Beatty said. The only thing I will add is one of the questions I get a lot is, how much extra is this going to cost the county? And the real answer is, we don't know, because I would have to know what everybody's income is in the county, which obviously we cannot do. So it's very hard to estimate how much that increase of $13,000 to the income limit would really affect the county unless we prorated it based on the percentage of people that use it at this rate. But that's about as close as we could get. I don't know if Mr. Beatty has anything to add to that.
We don't have the data as to how many new folks this would be, but just to give you some idea how tax freeze impacted us. In last year, in the 22 tax year, there were 2,378 properties on tax freeze, and it reduced our tax income $472,689. That's the difference between what they actually paid and what they would have paid had the property been unfrozen. This year, with the tax increase and adding about 100 new applicants, so we went from 2,378 to 2,472. The difference in this year's tax roll was $839,053. So that increase. So the longer people are on the program, obviously it makes a bigger difference, and the more individuals that we have. But that gives you, for this year, had we not had tax freeze, we would have had $840,000 more revenue. So that just gives you some idea kind of how it impacts the tax roll.
Any questions or comments from our Commissioner
I have
Johnson?
one question that I might ask Mr. Phillips. Jeff, are you familiar with, if this resolution comes up before the full commission, would it have to be by a 2/3 vote or a simple majority? Do you know? Okay, thank you.
Recognize Chairman Phillips.
I'm just kind of wondering if are these programs, Tab, are they considered for seniors, or can anyone qualify that relates to people who work? I'm just wondering if people are, if it just applies to people who are on a fixed income, seniors, or if it's anybody that works, someone that works, would they qualify, a younger person that's working, do they qualify for any of those programs?
You're talking about either program? Yeah. Well, the freeze is 65 or older. That's for the freeze, and that was, if you might remember, that was a constitutional amendment that even made that allowable, and so it specified that it's 65 or older. There's really no flexibility to that one. We obviously have the senior part of the tax relief program, but for a disabled veteran or a disabled homeowner, there is no age limit to that. If they qualify under the income limits and they meet the disability requirements, then age is not a factor on those programs.
It also wouldn't affect the veteran, correct?
The veteran's age or income, neither one's impacted. If they are totally and permanently disabled from a service-connected disability, they qualify that program. Age or income is not a factor.
Chairman Harris.
Tab, when you're calculating household income, are you including monies that would come from a trust?
A property, I'll answer this question. A property can be owned in a trust, but the recipient, the applicant, has to be the beneficiary of the trust. And we're seeing more trusts than we ever have. And as these income limits go up, it gets a little more complicated for us to see. If there's a trust operating outside, we're going to take what's on the applicant's federal income tax return if they file one. If they are receiving income from a trust, we would count it, but we don't count what someone has in the bank. We would count interest, but we wouldn't count your retirement account. We would count your distribution, but it's not an asset. It is strictly an income, so there's no asset requirements to that. So if you're somehow not taking that income, we wouldn't count it, which may be your question. If I've put assets into a trust of which I'm not gaining any benefit, would I have to count those? And no, sir, we wouldn't count that as income. That would be owned by the trust. But now, if you're taking benefit from that trust, then it would count.
Mr. Johnson.
If any of the people had a CD, it would only be on the interest, it wouldn't be on the
Yes, sir. It would only be on the interest.
correct, thank you.
Yes, sir. Strictly income.
Commissioner Irvin.
So I'm gathering it's basically an AGI number you're looking at? Adjusted gross income on your 1040?
It would be the adjusted gross income, but then we would count back the non-taxable portion of Social Security, and we would deduct out the Medicare portion. So we count the net check of Social Security, because not all Social Security is taxed in the AGI. So it's kind of, the basic way would be AGI, subtract out the taxable part of Social Security, and then add back the net Social Security payment.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And it kind of goes to, let's say someone had the ability, hypothetically, to adjust their income so that not all of it were taxed or showed up on a 1040 or whatever. What happens in that scenario? Let's hypothetically, let's say someone had a fair amount in tax exempt. Tax-exempt securities, or an irrevocable trust scenario where that's a different tax scheme potentially.
If the home is owned in an irrevocable trust, it doesn't qualify. So, you know, if the property is part of an irrevocable trust, it doesn't qualify for the program. We would count non-taxable income that shows up on the 1040. We would add that, you know, it would show up, it's not taxable, but that qualifying dividends and non-taxable, that would still count as income. I think your question is, if you're sophisticated enough financially to not have all your income show up on your tax returns, could you make income that would let you qualify for this program anyway?
I'm just trying to understand it, and one follow-up to that.
But let me answer that question.
Okay.
The answer to that is yes. You could. I mean, you know, you could.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand how the system works. And then you mentioned irrevocable trust. What about a revocable?
Revocable trust can, as long as the applicants are the beneficiaries of the trust. We would count the income of whoever the beneficiaries of the trust are. But an irrevocable trust, because actually then the trust is the sole owner, and I don't understand all those laws, but it doesn't qualify. And this, just to kind of share, you know, our staff, I'm proud of our staff because they're not trained accountants or financial advisors, and they do a great job of working through and figuring this out, and sometimes we have to scratch our heads and we have to run upstairs and ask Michael, have you seen this before? And call and get some help, because we just want to try to be fair and treat everybody right. But these things do come up.
And so that I understand also, is the differential, is that something the state has offered to help with? Or is that on us, basically?
Completely, this is a county option, so that frees, the relief, we match. The county has chosen to match, the commission's done, that's a great thing that we match. The state pays part of it, kind of implements that program, but the freeze is an option that the county can adopt, so whatever reduction of revenue, there would be no state funds to offset that.
And Michael's already said, I think that it's really hard to model how much that might be in terms of, we don't know how many folks. Is there any data available that would show, in terms of within a county, within a statistical area, within anything along those lines, that would show this is the likely income within certain levels?
I don't know that, I'm going to be just honest with you. Statistics was the weakest class I had in my whole college experience. And I appreciate that teacher. He was so nice, but it just wasn't my grace. But let's say that the distribution follows a bell curve. We're looking about as much additional income to go to 60 from where we are as the difference between the 47.5 and the limit to tax relief. And so if that distribution, you're looking at probably 800 to 1,000, maybe 1,100 more properties will qualify under the new limit than qualified under the old limit. So you're looking at, roughly maybe a third more. We'll give you some idea of the impact that would have on us. And again, that's my best guess. I don't know a better way, as I've tried to, from a manpower standpoint, tried to figure out how to implement this program effectively. Those are the numbers we've kind of looked at.
I've got two requests here. Chairman Harris, you asked first. I'll recognize you, and then we'll go to Commissioner Johnson again.
Yeah, if we raise this to $6,000, this is going to be a substantial workload on you and your staff. So do you have sufficient I don't know how to say that. Do you have workforce to handle this? Or are you going to come to the budget and ask us to increase and hire new employees?
We have been, since this was kind of, we've been looking, our goal is to not to have to hire any more employees. But Mr. Chairman, I can't guarantee that we can get everybody in and it is some more work on the assessor's office as well, because they have to keep up with those properties being frozen and run data on that. We've talked about, and we've actually been working so that we can start earlier in the summer, because we can do these applications in the summer, which is a little slower for us. And so we've been talking about our schedule and adding a day to our Smyrna location to hope that we can do it with the manpower that we have. But it's going to be a little bit of a stretch. But we're going to do our best to do it. It's not a threat to the program, but I just want to be honest with you. So when I do come back, well, I asked you the question, and you said, no, I'm not telling you definitely no. I'm going to tell you, we're going to do the best we can to do it under the current budget that we have. We can get through this budget, I think, fine until next July. But we're going to do the best we can. But it will be because you have to requalify for this program every year. So we have to see these individuals every year. We have to look at this income every year. So it's not just come in and sign a piece of paper. It's a 20 to 30 minute application process, then the processing of that afterwards. So you just, you take 20 to 30 minutes and multiply that 1,000 times. It gets into man hours, and then we certainly don't want it to detract from the other things we're doing from a collection standpoint and those things. But we are trying to be as efficient as we can and try to manage better. But it will be a substantial amount of work, and we may need some more help.
Mr. Johnson.
Tib, if my memory serves me right, I believe your slogan when you ran for office was, and by the way, thank you for the presentation that you've made tonight, but your slogan was, "You can trust Teb." That has held true, and I assure you, I believe it will hold true from now on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Piercy.
Other than the limitations of the $60,000 income cap, is there other obstacles that would keep someone from qualifying for this program?
It would be no different than what it is today, because the program would operate the same. We're just changing the income limit. There are some qualifications. I mean, we have to, their income, there's some ownership requirements and those type of things, Commissioner. I don't think I've answered your question very well, but I'm not sure really how to address it, and I apologize for that.
Are you talking about absentee owners?
You have to, this has to be your primary resident. It's not for any property. It has to be their primary residence. So if they're getting it in another state, they don't qualify for us, and they have to live there, have to live on the property, and it has to be their primary residence. And it freezes a maximum of 5 acres. So if you live, on a 100-acre farm, you can freeze up to 5 acres. The rest of the property would be unfrozen, would fluctuate as it normally does. And there are some folks that are in that situation.
The 5 acres that they can freeze, does the value of their home have anything to do with it?
It would freeze the value of the home, but the value of a home does not affect this program. So they can live in a $100,000 home, or they can live in a $5 million home. It'll freeze. If they meet the income requirements, it will freeze that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Irvin.
So if I'm understanding this, the money's not coming from the state. So we either, if we were to increase it, and I'm all for lowering taxes, trust me on that, they would drop for those in this category. Presumably they would increase one way or another for those, or there would be they'd have to increase for other categories. Is that, so it's kind of like a redistribution?
There'd be only
Is
an
that what-
increase if there was a tax increase. There'd be no change if you wasn't, unless the assessed value changed.
Well, it affects tax revenue, doesn't it?
It would. I mean, this year it lowered revenue $838,000. So, which is a little less than a penny on this year's tax rate. But yeah, if your question is, so when you contemplate how much money a penny would increase taxes, because these properties are frozen, it will increase taxes less than it would if these properties were not frozen. So if you have to, I think your question is, if we have to have so much revenue, then would it mean that we might have to raise another penny of tax increase on the unfrozen properties because these properties are frozen? And the question that would be yes. To produce the same revenue, it would be a little higher rate on the unfrozen properties.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to be sure I understood.
Yes, sir. I hope that answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to make a couple of comments, and part of that's kind of the history of how this came about. And basically, the commissioners and our former commissioners, which I was part of, I know Trey was, I'm thinking Paul, you were in, and possibly Jeff at the same time. He's nodding. But what we're worried about is what we're seeing now is these property values are increasing so much that we're basically pricing people out of the county, and they can't afford to live here because of these taxes. And we wanted some mechanism to protect our people, especially, once they've retired and assuming they're on a fixed income of some kind. And we actually lobbied the state for many years before this came about. And of course, the state sets that level. And of course, we've got the option now to change it from 47 something up to the 60. And personally, I wish it had been that high or higher when it first went in. I think Chairman Phillips kind of hit the nail on the head here. Yes, we're trying to protect our lower income people, and of course they're going to be more adversely affected. But I think it's fair. I don't care if you're a millionaire or a pauper, the rules ought to apply across the board to everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need to have social nets in place. I'm not saying that at all. But I think it's only fair somebody that's worked hard and been able to succeed, they shouldn't be penalized because they worked hard all their life, and somebody may not have been as lucky as them. But that's my take on this, and why we actually did it was to protect our people and so that they could continue to live here in Rutherford County. And personally, I am in favor of us raising this to 60. I'd like to see us move this forward to the full commission to get their approval. And yes, we will never know until we actually implement it, and it'll change from year to year how much that will cost us. But most of that is a deferment of taxes, and it's not like we may be the first year, but after that, we'll basically have a baseline set, so we'll know what's in there. But, and I'm glad Chairman Harris brought this up, is being able to implement this is part of the cost. And TEB's office or our assessor's office, there's a possibility that we may have to add personnel over there. There's a possibility we may have to add personnel there anyway with the way we're growing. But anyway, that's my take on it. Like I said, I've seen this for a long time. I've got two people wanting to speak, and I'll get back to you, Jeff. Chairman Harris.
Well, one of the things I'm concerned with is there's legislation being proposed to do appraisals every 2 years. So that's really concerning to me, because that's going to hurt people if we have another tax increase, if that happens. I'm going to make a motion that we raise the rates up to the amount that the Mr. Beatty proposed, and go ahead and send this to the full commission.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Second, Commissioner Johnson. Chairman Phillips, you had something you wanted to say? Okay. Any further discussion or any questions? We got Tab here kind of on the hot seat, so he's been a big help in this, and I appreciate you sticking around.
I'm just trying to, I understand the motion, I understand the concept, and I'm generally in favor. My concern is we don't have a clue, it sounds like, how much this is. It's not, modeled at this point, and, we seem to be accumulating very small tax increases or revenue losses. And I'm concerned that all the accumulation of those needs some quantification at some point. In other words, we need to know how much they are before we just start approving, additional increases and things along the line. Conceptually, I think this is a good idea. We just have to figure out how to pay for it after we've determined what it's the value of it or the cost of it. That's my concern here.
And I understand that fully, and I'm on board with that. I kind of look at the estimates that we got. We had, 2,472 people last year, I believe Mr. Beatty said, and, it cost us $839,053. And if we add, I think he estimated, and I think he's as qualified as anybody, estimated maybe another 1,100 people in there. I'm not, just a quick estimate there. I'm going to say at the most another 400,000, somewhere in that neighborhood, and I think that's a high guess. So you'd be about $1.2 million, so a little over a penny total, not in addition. So that's my guess. But I'm kind of like Commissioner Johnson. I've seen Mr. Beatty's calculations, and I do trust him too. So, Chairman Phillips.
I will make a comment. You mentioned a couple of times, this is my take on it, and here's my take on the thing. We've got senior citizens who retire and are on a fixed income. Their income does not go up, it's fixed. They get an incremental increase, sometimes with Social Security, but it's a fixed income. We are not fixing their expenses. We're increasing their expenses by increasing property taxes and those kinds of things. What this does, my take on it, is that it freezes their expenses to a degree, and we can help them along the line to do that. That's my take on it. Plus, there's also people out there that have turned down opportunities to participate in the workforce because earning a little extra money would put them over the limit. This would also help that situation out to give those people a little bit of an opportunity to participate in the workforce, to create a little bit more income and spending money for themselves. It does a world of good for our senior citizens that have limited additional options for revenue, especially those that are extremely, and I'm going to call us super seniors, that really can't participate in the workforce anymore. That's the benefit of this. And those are the type of people, in my mind, that we need to protect more than anything else, is protect those seniors. They don't have the opportunity to, for the most part, to increase their income, but we have the opportunity to increase their tax burden, and we need to give those people the relief. If they're on a fixed income, we need to fix their expenses to as much of a degree as we possibly can. And if it's $400,000, so be it.
And I agree with what the chairman just said. I'm just trying to understand how much we're talking about. Michael, do you have any sense? I mean, do you? I don't want to put you on the spot either, because I'm learning about this a little while back, a little bit ago. Do you have any sense, is that a fairly solid number? In other words, 4, 5, 6, even if we double it, it's probably still within a range. But I'm just trying to get a sense for what that number might be.
I can only take an educated guess based on the 2,300 to 2,400 people we already have on there at a $47,000 income limit. So I can take the percentage difference between 60 and 40. I'm using round numbers here, between 60 and 47, and I'd say Mr. Beatty's numbers are probably pretty close, because I think that's pretty close to what he did if you're looking at kind of like a bell curve or looking at statistics. However, I think the one unknown that I will not be able to answer would be, is there more couples making $55,000 than 47, or more single filers making that? I couldn't tell you. We could look at something from the Department of Labor statistics, but I think when you're looking at that, they're giving you an average. And of course, as we all know with averages, when I was glancing at Department of Labor statistics, you could have somebody making, $500 million a year included in that average. It's going to swing it. And so I think I'd have to try to find some type of median income, to get closer. I think that's a good educated guess that's been talked about tonight. But as far as it's an educated guess. And I don't know that we could get much more accurate than that unless we polled everybody. But I don't know that I wouldn't be willing to share my income necessarily on a poll. And I think most people wouldn't. So I think it's an educated guess. But if I had to give mine, it would be fairly close to that. Yes.
Any other?
Mr. Chairman, would our municipalities, our cities, also have to adopt something similar?
Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and Laverne have the freeze. And the legislation states that if the county trustee collects their taxes or does their applications, that they would move to that new revenue, and then they could vote to do it. I have discussed it with all those jurisdictions, because we either collect their taxes or we do their applications, to inform them that this was being discussed and that it would impact them. And I've talked to Smyrna, and I think they're going to be in favor of that, and the jurisdictions that I've talked about. But I did let them know, because it will, yes, sir, it will impact them. I think they would, I can't speak for them. They might choose to follow whatever. If they don't, then we'll work with them. But if they want to continue that, we'll continue the application process for them and make it uniform, which would be, it would be so much easier to have all of us doing the same thing.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes. Motion carries. All right. Moving on to item number 5, our fund condition report.
So as part of the fund condition report tonight, I want to talk about our bond issue that we closed today. So we did have our bond sale last week. We had 9 bidders. And I think one thing that made us feel good about that sale was we had 5 bidders within 1 basis point of each other. And all 9 bidders were within 12 basis points of each bidder. And so we feel like we got fairly competitive bids or fairly representation of the market at that point. So that is good news. The bad news is that bond interest rates ticked up a tad bit over the last couple months. If you've noticed in the news, the Fed has continued to stay hawkish, I guess you could say. And so our true interest cost of this bond for the $180 million that we issued was approximately 4.09%. 4.09%. Now, that was really close in line with what we budgeted for, so that is good. We were hoping for a little less, but over the last few months and weeks, that has ticked up. But we did close today. Well, technically, we closed tomorrow. We signed the paperwork today, and we should final close tomorrow, so I just wanted to notify you all of that. And then moving on, I want to touch on a couple things on the revenue report. And sticking with the theme of good and bad news, the good news is our sales tax countywide for the school system, which is where half of it goes, is up 2.8%. But as you notice on your revenue reports that I put on your iPads tonight, the county side of sales tax collection is down a little over 6%. So good and bad news there. Hotel motel tax is down, but we only have 1 month of that in because that is 2 months behind. So we're not, even though that percentage looks large, it's only because we're comparing 1 month. So we're not as concerned about that. Our adequate facilities tax is still up, so that is good news. And then we have not started receiving property tax in yet as of this report, so that's why there's still 0 down there. And then also want to note, if you're analyzing the revenue report, it looks like we have a 300% gain in budget in our Fund 151, and that's due to some good faith money coming in. That will eventually go away as a percentage-wise, but that was just an anomaly that we got there. And so with that, I'll take any questions.
I just wanted to double check the debt service fund is still in good shape with reasonable.
Yes, so we budgeted for a full year at 4% is when we built the budget. Now, obviously, we will not have a full year of interest and premium payments. So when we were able to structure this debt issuance, we did structure approximately $5 million principal payment on this debt this year. And so we are still in very good shape this year in our debt service fund. Accordingly, we also budgeted very conservatively for investment income. And so, like I said, we did budget conservatively. I was hoping for a little bit lower than 4% rate, but at least we were protected by budgeting conservatively. So I do feel good about it, to answer your question.
And then part of this is paying off the intercompany, basically.
Part of
The interfund account.
So we did issue a bond anticipation note of $35 million last year. As you know, that was for anticipation of needed cash flow. As of last week when I looked, we have not needed that, so we actually didn't spend any of that. That will be paid, that cash will be paid back into our debt service fund as soon as these bond proceeds come in. So we actually didn't need that, but it was a good safety measure. We came very close to needing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the Finance Director?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve this report.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Only thing I want to add to that is congratulations on your first bond issuance, working for the county. Okay, next is item 6, risk management, financial report. Welcome.
Good evening. Ed Elam, Insurance and Risk Management Director. So your 264 fund for the month of September Revenue, $2,218,682. Expenses, $1,996,415. For the year, $18,309,298 in revenue. Expenses, $14,921,350. Revenue less expenses for the year, calendar year, $3,387,948. For the fiscal year, you have a total $5,640,151. In revenue, expenditures, $5,965,124. Revenue less expenditures, a negative $324,973. Under the 266 fund for September, workers' comp, $4,652.14. OJI, $79,106.96. Total for the month, $83,759.10. Year-to-date, $4,652.14 for workers' comp. OJI, year-to-date, $99,538.39. And the total, year-to-date, $104,190.53. And then the county attorney expenses for September, $24,302.67. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Any questions for Director Elam?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Any questions or further discussion?
I have one, sir. Mr. Chairman, this is not on your report, but it's something that I've concerned with. Cigna, who is our insurance, is who we use, correct?
Yes, our carrier.
Okay. There's been some problems with negotiating with one of the carriers. Has that problem been fixed, or are you still going through that?
No.
Do I need to explain it? You can explain it.
Yeah, and I apologize if you didn't, I sent an email out, I think, to all the commissioners and all the insurance committee members. I think that was Monday sometime. It was resolved with Cigna, and I got that information late Sunday afternoon, that everything has been negotiated and they've reached an agreement.
Okay, that's great news.
Yes,
So
yes, it is.
So just for everybody's information, when is the last day of enrollment?
Last day of enrollment, our open enrollment will start October the 13th at noon, and that's on a Friday. And then it will end October the 27th at noon on a Friday. And just so you understand, why that's done on Friday to Fridays, we open up the enrollment on Friday. People have a whole weekend to take a look at it. And we've moved the dates around, and we found that Friday is better because people have a tendency to procrastinate, and so it gives them Monday through Friday as the last week to finally do it. We did it on a Tuesday, and we were bombarded on Monday. So that's why it's kind of set up for a 2-week period. And of course, the county commission agreed to not do any type of a rate change. So your premiums, your rates are the same as what they were. For 2024 will be the same as what they are this year.
The employees still have to go in to, to re-sign up?
Yes, they'll
even
have.
if they don't change
yes.
anything?
And there's a bunch of communications that'll be going out in the next few days. Some should have received some yesterday, I believe.
So
Mr. Johnson.
basically, Cigna renewed their contract, correct?
Cigna renewed their contract with TriStar. Now, what I will mention is it's not, so you understand, everybody knows there's inflation. And a lot of your carriers are locked into those contracts. So as soon as those contracts come up for renewal, whether it's Cigna, Blue Cross, Aetna, any of those, Humana, they will all be renegotiating their contracts again. So this is not, it's not something that I'm surprised with. It affects us because our carrier is Cigna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Have we called roll on this one, Mark?
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion? We don't have to call roll on this one. There's no money. All in favor of this motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ed, and
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
and thank you, Chairman Harris, because that was my question coming up, so you saved me.
That was going to be my question, too.
Yeah, there you go. Next is item 7, Rutherford Opioid Board Recommendations. And Uncle, you going to do this one for us?
So on your iPad, you will see several contracts. So this budget amendment includes, or this item includes those contracts plus the budget amendment. The budget amendment includes an increase for $31,545 for advertising. That are those contracts. It also includes an additional $60,000 in other charges. The Opioid Board or Committee approved an additional nonprofit allocation for hustle recovery. They were successful. They already had one allocation this year, and it was a test allocation, and from all reports that have been made, that was successful. I think Chairman Harris may add to that in a second. And then that is coming out of the our restricted opioid funds from the state, and so that's what that is tonight. And we'll add, I believe the advertising for that will be at the Avenue. It's a billboard contract, a social indoor contract, and then a contract with Sinclair Advertising, which is Fox 17 News. But that's what's before you tonight. And this did pass unanimously through the Rutherford County Opioid Board.
One thing I'll mention about our last meeting, one thing that was brought up is that Nashville, Tennessee, is the leading hub for opioid deaths in the nation. We're on their fringe, so I give you an idea of the problem that we're facing and why we're trying to disperse this money as well as we can. Chairman Harris, you got anything to say about these?
As far as hustle recovery goes, I want to comment on that one. Commissioners, we took a chance on an organization. What they do is when somebody has either been arrested or overdosed and is looking for rehabilitation, looking for rehab, a lot of times because of the just so much demand, there is no beds. So during that time, someone could either go back to their drug dealer, or sometimes die. So I took a chance on I didn't take a chance. The board took a chance on an organization that what they do is they give up to 4 days to allow somebody to come in. They house them, they cancel them, they monitor them, and then they find them a bed, and then they take them to that rehab facility. I have been watching them closely. It was a success, and they saved 37 people last month. So 37 people were being able to find rehab. And I mean, we got a long ways to go, but that's a start. And nobody's doing that. And so it's a testament to y'all that y'all passed this and give us the opportunity to find new ways to try to address this. So I think, I hope that you approve this. These are all been vetted. All these are very important things to get the word out and the awareness. And another thing too is we agreed to a contract with Middle Tennessee State University to do their data analytics, to do all the data work on these people that we give money to. So we're very much watching them. And they told us that over 40 people signed up for their workshop to learn how to write grants. And that's just amazing. So we're doing some good things, and I hope you understand this is very important stuff, and I hope you vote for it. Thank you.
I assume you're making a motion to
I
approve
was
this.
just going to say that, and I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, guys. All right, next up is item 8, General Fund Budget Amendment for PAWS. Mr. Gregory, yeah, there he is.
Good evening. Michael Gregory with Rutherford County PAWS. We're asking to do a budget amendment, pulling $7,000 from our PAWS donation line over to our building improvements. We've been in the middle of a flooring project for 2 or 3 years. The price went up a little bit this year, and it just makes sense if we're going to have to shut down the lobby for a few days to go ahead and get all of it done at one time. So again, no county money, but PAWS donation money to make that project successful.
Okay, any questions, or I'll entertain a motion if not.
I move.
Motion to approve the amount. And a second. Any questions for Mr. Gregory? Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Sewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you all.
Okay, item 9, and we've got a couple things under the Sheriff's Department. General Fund Budget Amendment for the Sheriff's Office. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Steve Spence. I'm a Deputy Chief with the Sheriff's Office. The first amendment allocates $514,067 for the financial year 23-24 funds awarded to the Sheriff's Office for mental health patient transport operation grant. Funds will be used to other contracted transport services and adding cameras to our existing transport vans. We'll be placing $499,067 in our other contracted services and then $15,000 into our data processing equipment.
We've actually got 2 more requests that fall in under this. If I don't hear an objection, we'll have you go ahead and do those other 2 requests at the same time.
Yes, sir.
Continue, please.
This amendment is to recognize revenue and expenses for the new financial year 24 Tennessee Highway Safety Office Community-Based Police Traffic Safety Enforcement and Education Program grant. Program for the Sheriff's Department award for overtime-related benefits and law enforcement equipment. The new grant period performance is from October 1st of 23 to September 30th of 24. This is a grant with no match. The next one is the amendment to being requested to request revenue and expenses for the new financial year 2014 driver safety grant program for the Sheriff's Department to utilize for the SRO's overtime for teens, events, and related benefits. The new grant period for this performance is October 1st of 23 to September 30th of 24. This grant requires no match.
Okay, you've heard the request. Any questions or?
This is for items 9, 10, and 11, correct?
No,
No.
no.
Just item number 9.
9 has got three requests in it by itself.
9, 10, and 11.
No, sir.
These are all of these budget amendments are under item 9. Since they were all a no match and very similar in nature, we just put them all as a general fund budget amendment under item 9.
But you'll see a separate request on 9 and 10. So, any other questions from the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion. A motion to approve.
Second.
And second. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Sewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Item 10.
To recognize revenue and expenditures for the new award financial year 2022 Bureau of Justice Assistant States Criminal Aliens Assistant Grant Award for construction and building improvements to the Adult Detention Center. We anticipate to use the funds to replace some cell door locks and to repair a padded door and booking. $56,156, and we're going to place it into our jail building improvements.
Any further questions? Is there another request on this one also?
Yes, sir.
Okay with the committee, we'll continue.
This budget amendment allocates funds awarded to the Rutherford County for the Tennessee Corrections Institute Jail Financial Year 23 Training Equipment Grant, no match grant. Period of performance is October the 15th of 23 through April the 30th of 24. The scope of the project is to purchase 19 laptops, adapters, a wireless access point, and some flash drives for training. $15,000 would be placed into our data processing equipment line item.
Okay, any questions on the request? Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Sewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Pugh.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, item 11, and we're going to have Michael cover this one for us. Those guys that have been here for a while know that we've bounced back and forth on this particular topic over the years. So, Michael?
So this is a contract and a budget amendment here for you tonight. And this is for the Electronic Monitoring Indigent Fund Appropriation Grant. Now, the reason you're seeing this year and haven't seen this in years past is because last year, for example, the state administered this program, and then now the state is telling us we have to administer this program. And so what this is for people declared indigent by the court who are on electronic monitoring. This does not include DUI interlock devices. This is for people that are on electronic ankle monitoring and stuff that are declared indigent. So there has always been a match with this. In the past, we have submitted money to the state. The state has matched that and paid the bills that the companies have submitted. Now, we are going to have to administer this program in-house here at the county, and they are sending their portion of funds in the form of a grant to us, unlike in the past few years. So what you're seeing tonight is going to be the contract with the state, and then also you're going to see a budget amendment related to that.
Mike or Mark, do we need to do this separately?
You may go together.
We can do it together so we can approve the contract and the amount at the same time, if that's
Yes,
the will
and
of the committee.
I want to clarify, once the judge declares that person indigent, we're going to have to pay for this electronic monitoring regardless. So we are happy to state, even though we don't really want to administer the program in-house, we are trying to absorb that with the current staff we have. I do want to give a huge shout out to Alyssa in probation, Alyssa Phillips, who has pulled a lot of heavy lifting together, is trying to help us track all of these people to make sure that we're getting billed correctly. It did put a heavy workload on us, but so far we've been able to do that in-house. But regardless, we would still have to, without this grant or not, we still have to pay for the electronic monitoring of people that are declared indigent.
Kind of sounds like an unfunded mandate, doesn't it?
Quick question.
Any discussion?
Just a
Commissioner?
quick question. It's coming out of unassigned fund balance, and one of the 58's in the wrong column, or no?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
So you're gonna decrease unassigned fund balance because these are increases and decreases. You're gonna decrease unassigned fund balance. You're gonna increase the revenue that we're receiving, but then we're also increasing the expense by the same amount of both the new revenue and both coming out of a decrease out of unassigned fund balance.
So the grant is only for half of what the cost would be.
So the other portion coming out of unassigned fund balance is our match.
Right.
It's our 50-50 match. But keep in mind, you're not looking at debits and credits here, you're looking at increases and decreases. So we're decreasing unassigned fund balance, which essentially is going to be our portion of the revenue. Then you're going to notice a revenue line of 58. That's the state's portion of the revenue. And then those two added together equal the new expense line item that we're going to have. So we're going to spend 116 with 58 coming from the state revenue and 58 coming from our unassigned.
Got it, thank you.
And that's assuming that we were guessing right on how many people are declared indigent.
That's correct, and I'll add, last year, we budgeted, I believe it was 35 or 30, I think it was 35 or 30, it was the budget before I got here, and it exceeded that. So we ended up having, part of the cleanup budget amendment at the end of last year was funding some of that extra cost that we had to cover ourselves. So we hope this is enough. If it's not, we'll come back, just like we did last year. It all depends on how many people that the court system declares indigent.
Okay, you've heard the director's explanation. Any further questions for Michael? If not, I will entertain a motion to do this.
So moved.
Commissioner Johnson moves to approve.
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Sereno. Like I said, we don't have a whole lot of choice here, guys. Any other discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Srinial,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Item 12, Education Capital Projects Fund Budget Amendment. I thought I saw Brian hanging around. There he is.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chairman. Brian Runyon, CFO, Rutherford County Schools. Dr. Sullivan normally would present this, but he is actually currently out of state right now on fall break, so I'm here to do it. Before I do so, I've got a handout for you regarding this amendment, so it'll help you better understand what projects we're actually pulling this money out of unassigned fund balance for, or out of the fund balance for.
Brian.
Brian, are these only, go ahead, excuse me. Are these only projects from last year that weren't completed?
Correct.
That had already been approved?
Correct.
Okay.
Which will lead me to the amendment and explaining this a little bit. This is coming, this amendment is for our Fund 177, which is our capital projects fund. And so what happens each July 1st, outstanding purchase orders in this fund are liquidated. The funds go to the fund balance, which in this fund account is $34,685 committed for capital projects. These purchase orders are for projects that were not finished by June 30th, but were approved last year. The amendment takes those funds out of $34,685 committed for capital projects and rebudgets the expenditures for the carryover projects that are approved last year but have not been completed. This year we have $13,577,898 in funds to rebudget. The recommended motion is to amend the 23-24 capital projects budget Fund 177 by reducing account 34,685 committed for capital projects by $13,577,898 and by increasing maintenance and repair services buildings account 91,300,335, other contracted services account 91,300,399, and building purchases account 91,300,732 for a combined total of the same $13,577,898 as presented.
Any questions from the committee? I know Chairman Gooch is on this committee, so we'd normally hear from him. Unfortunately, he's not here with us right now. Chairman Phillips, are you on? You have,
This is the exact same motion that came out of Health and Ed, correct? Unanimous came out of Health and Ed.
okay, thank you, Chairman Phillips. Heard the discussion. Any other questions? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. I will remind our listening audience, this is funding that has already been approved, and we just have to reallocate it because it hadn't been completed at the end of our fiscal year. Any further discussion?
What is this number usually? I mean, what's kind of the, I'm just curious, as 13 million, I don't recall from last year. Is it kind of around that number usually, or what's the usual?
Because we had more money allocated to that account last year, or to the Fund 177, it is a little bit more steep than what it has been in previous years. But a lot of that had to do with, not being able to get the projects completed because we weren't able to get the contractors to be able to get, for example, you'll see a lot of your amounts on there are for HVAC systems. We weren't able to get those completed by June 30th. We had the purchase orders out there for them. The money was obligated, the money was approved, or the projects were approved. We just weren't able to get them completed by June 30th. So what happens is they get, the best way I can describe it is it's liquidated, but it's an entry made here at the courthouse to move that money into fund balance. And then what we're doing is pulling that back out of fund balance in order to pay now for those projects that are being completed in this year that were actually obligated. The money was obligated last year. So it's a little bit more this year than what it has been in the past, just due to the fact that there was more money allocated in Fund 177 for us than there was previous years.
I know former Commissioner Allen, that's her business, had told us a year or so ago that a lot of these HVA systems were on 2-year back orders. So, you know, it wasn't them not trying, it's just availability of the units in some cases. But Commissioner Irving.
Just one other quick question. Okay, so if I add the 13.6 million, and refresh my memory, the 177 budget for this year, what's the total projects? Michael, do you recall?
Michael, yeah.
17 million. It's on your SharePoint, on your iPad.
Oh, okay. So
17,513.
So we're looking at 30 some odd $million.
31. 1091.
Okay. And do you have a projection in terms of how much of this is going to be able to be cleared this coming year?
Again, without knowing what the supply and demand is for some of these projects, I would say the majority of this 13 million will be cleared this year. You know, once we pull it, because some of it has, you know, it's sitting in fund balance, so we do have money in there. So we are paying some of these purchase orders for these particular projects right now out of the 17 million that we've currently got. So once we put that money back into these lines, then we will actually, you know, have that to be able to cover what we're currently paying for purchase orders that are out of there now. So the purchase orders that got reissued for this year, some of them are currently already being paid out of this 13 million.
So if I take this number plus the 177 budgeted amount, that's not additive? Is that what you're saying? Or in other words, are there going to be in this coming year $31 million, or is it 17 million minus the 13?
No, so if this passes tonight, you will have $31 million in budgeted expenditures this year. And to expand on what Brian is saying is, so every year, what happens when you issue a PO is that PO closes out to an account called prior year encumbrances. And so we make an adjustment to put that back in the current year expense line item for comparative purposes. And so what happens is when we do that, that project is already approved. It's now going to show over budget because we're going to show that expense. Even though that project to put HVAC at Oakland High School, I'm just picking I don't know if it's on the list. Let's say we pulled a PO for $1 million last year to upgrade all the HVAC there. What'll end up happening is if we spent $500,000 last year and $500,000 this year, if we don't do that, then your expense is never going to show up on the income statement per se, or statement of operations. And so we make an entry to show that expense in the year it was paid. And what happens is if we don't do this budget amendment right here, it's going to show that over budget. And so to answer your question, you will have $31 million in expenditures in this fund right here budgeted this year. That doesn't mean they'll spend $31 million. It means they could, but it's highly likely that they will spend a good portion of that, and that the same thing will happen next year. Now, the other thing I will add is, I believe it was the year before I got here, there were some pennies moved from 141 down into Fund 177, and I wasn't here, but I don't remember how many pennies that was. But I do believe there was 4 or 5 pennies. I'd have to go back and look, which would have increased the budget for 177. So I think you would have to take that into comparison if you were going to look at a 5-year comparison of this right here, of the magnitude of projects when they moved some pennies from 141 to 177. Like I said, I think that was 2 years ago or the year before I got here, but I'd have to go back and look. But to answer your question, yes, 31 million, a little over 31 million in expenditures will be budgeted.
Yeah, I'm just curious, does the school board have the folks to get those projects caught up, basically?
Again, it's already on the books to be done. It's already scheduled to be done. It's just the fact of being able to get the materials, the supplies, and everything to be able to get it done. I'd like to say yes, it'd be completed tomorrow, but I don't know, depending on what supplies and material the contractors are actually needing to be able to complete the projects. Some of them, like I said, have already been completed, and we're already paying the purchase orders for them. So, for example, if you look at the 10 portables at $1.5 million, we're already paying that because they don't want to bill us until they get all the portables set up and completed, set up completely, ready to go and be used. So they will not send us a bill until actually, all of the 10 of the portables are set up and completed. So that has happened already. So that $1.5 million, is one of those items that's already being paid out of that $13 million.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Johnson.
Another question. Does all this go out with the RFP?
Anything that's over $50,000
Okay.
gets bid out.
What I'm looking at is this kind of asinine when you start looking at $30,000 to replace doorknobs, and then you got $190,000 worth of rekeying doors.
Yeah, so that's basically what those items are for security purposes of what the state are mandating us having to do. So I agree with you totally. It's expensive, but those are bid out based off, and obviously we go with the lowest bid whenever they are bid out, but that's the process of what it costs to do these projects these days. So
This is basically money that's in the piggy bank that you're going to spend this year, right?
well, it's money that rolled into the reserve, and now we're just pulling it back out of the reserve.
In layman's terms, it's in the piggy bank.
It's in the piggy bank, yes.
I was just curious if you could give us a quick update on the Church Street property, since there appears to have been some confusion about that.
Let's go ahead and end this one first, and then we'll hold his feet to the fire for that afterwards. Any other discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, call roll.
Mr. Sereno?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. And Ryan, if you don't mind, indulge Commissioner for a moment, please.
I was just asking about an update on the Church Street property and what's going on there, and can you provide, well, whatever you can provide.
Okay, so I haven't had a chance to talk with Dr. Sullivan or Trey Lee in the last 2 weeks because I've been out of state as well. So last I heard is that it's, we purchased it. We're waiting to see what renovations need to be done to it. We're also waiting for the last few lessees to get out, to evacuate out of there to the point that they need, to the level of what we said was acceptable for us to be able to purchase the property. There's still one or two that are going to stay in there temporarily until, that they find another place to go. But as far as I know, the roof, HVAC, and those things will be some of the renovations that will be done to the building itself. As far as I know, we're still planning on, and I haven't heard any different, as far as continuing to make it an alternative school. As far as grade-wise, I'm not sure. I know for sure it's going to be a 6 through 12, but it could also be, your elementary grades as well. Some of the space will be used for administrative purposes because we just did renovations on our central office and we're still overcrowded in the central office. So some of those positions may move over to this particular building as well once the renovations are completed. But we're not even sure that we'll be getting in this building in this school year. We're not sure yet. So that's the last information that I've heard on the building itself.
Thank you, Ryan.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
All right. Item 13, state grant contract for youth services. This is okay, great.
Evening. I'm Todd Savage. I'm an Assistant Director at Rutherford County Youth Services. We're asking for your approval to renew a grant contract that we've had for many years. It's with the Tennessee Department of Children's Services. It's a $45,000 grant that we get in increments of $9,000 each year. The only thing that's required to get it is our 15 hours of in-service training that the statute requires us to get anyway. So $9,000 a year to help supplement youth service officers' salaries.
Have we got any questions for Todd?
I make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Commissioner Sereno, any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Srinial,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Todd. Item 14, general fund budget transfer for recovery court.
Good evening. I'm Lindsay Davis, the Reentry Program Coordinator with Recovery Courts. We are requesting an amendment to the Bureau of Justice Assistance Reentry Career Training Grant to move $9,190 from line 499 that was originally proposed for curriculum that we were able to purchase with other grant funds to line 711 for furniture for the increased costs for the classroom at the Correctional Work Center.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Srinial,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Lindsay. Okay, item 15 has been deferred. Item 16 has been deferred, which brings us to item 17, resolution regarding the economic impact plan for the Stewart's Landing Development Area. And I think we have Mr. Hercules with us. Please come forward. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission members. I'm here tonight on behalf of this project. It's something that we're very involved with in Smyrna. I know you guys have been hearing a lot about TIFs recently. I also have with us tonight the developers and some representation from the TIF filing that we made. This TIF was filed with IDB and has been approved. I just want to tell you a little bit about, you're seeing a picture of Stewart's Landing up on the monitors tonight. 5.5 years ago, I was offered the position to go to Smyrna as a town manager. One of the things that was put in my lap very quickly was a 40-acre tract of land on Sam Ridley Parkway in front of Motlow that the town has owned for over 30 years with very much a vision for what we wanted on that property. And my challenge from the mayor and the council was to find that project. I will tell you, over the last 5.5 years, I could have sold this property 15 to 20 times if we would have been willing to put apartments on it. That was not the vision of what we wanted on Sam Ridley Parkway. What we wanted was a high-end retail development that brought a different level and category of retail shopping, and also a place that would become a position of a destination for people to come to. And if we want to talk to the developers a little bit, they've got a slideshow that can show you a little bit more about this property. But this property is made up of a boulevard-type entrance off of Sam Ridley Parkway. We have worked with TDOT to garner another red light to allow us to have ingress, egress out of this property. So if you look at this, the difference in this versus some of the strip centers and those kind of things that we see on Sam Ridley today, this does take us to that next level. It's very reminiscent of a project that you would see in Brentwood or some other places, Cool Springs, those kind of things. The developer has been working very hard. We've been working in concert now for about 9 to 10 months. We do have some potential clients that they already have on record that they're working with on contracts for this property, but it's made up of retail, it's made up of some office space, it's made up of a boutique hotel, possibly 2. There's restaurants, those type of things, sit-down type restaurants, and again, these are things that we're hearing from the community that are very important to our community. One thing that we did work with them on to give this development a different vibe is there's 75 condominiums that will be for sale condominiums that'll be elevated above this retail boulevard on the second and third floor. And then as you look into the boulevard, you see the smaller buildings. They call those jewel boxes. And typically what you'll find there is a jewel box would be a Warby Parker or maybe an ice cream store or something like that. So at the back of the property, there's a small amphitheater that's in part of this and some walking trails. What we're looking for is a place where Saturday night or Friday night I could take my wife to dinner versus going someplace tonight on San Bernardino Parkway. We have dinner and then we get back to the car and we go home. Here, you walk down the boulevard, you go to some of the boutique type shopping, you can go to one of the jewel boxes, maybe and get an ice cream. And then you walk back to the back, and on Friday night, you might be able to hear music or some sort of performance at the amphitheater. So again, it becomes that destination. So we're very proud of this, very excited about what this opportunity brings to our community. Now, I will tell you, in the TIF, a TIF is a product that helps us work with the developer to offset some of the expense through the tax increment financing. And you guys have learned a little bit about a TIF. And Michael and I had the opportunity to talk yesterday, and we, a TIF is a TIF, okay? But each product is different. And I would challenge you to think about what I want to share with you about this TIF for us. We have set a baseline. If you think about where this property is at today, it's undeveloped property in Smyrna with a zero tax base. You're not receiving any taxes at the county. We're not receiving any taxes at the city. What we did is set the baseline based on the price that we're selling this property to the developer. So immediately we'll begin to get a baseline tax through the real estate tax. And then any incentive tax reduction that they would receive would be only after they do an improvement. And as they do their improvements, then they would get the offset between the baseline tax and the new tax. And if you think about what we're doing also, if you look at this project versus maybe some other projects that you've seen, this one is about 90 to 95% retail. This is a tax-generating piece of property under this OPSIS. This project came into our town, and it's already been run through our planning commission as a PUD. This property is now, it will not change. If this property was sold, if this property was not developed for 3 or 4 years, at the end of the day, the only thing that could go on there is this vision. They cannot take this property and sell it. They can't take this property and change it and put apartments, those kind of things. It's under the PUD. It has to remain this product, or it has to come back to planning and be changed. And I will tell you, we waited 30 years to get this. I doubt very seriously there's going to be an appetite to change this. So we're, not only will we be receiving the retail or the residential property tax, we will also, because this is retail and motels, we'll immediately garner those taxes. So this project, when we ran it through the Younger report, and most of you are familiar with Younger, they do all the pilots and those kind of things for the county. This project has a 6-to-1 return because of the high density of the retail, the hotels, and those kind of things. And that was something that was very much in part of our vision, not only what we wanted to see, but how we wanted this property to actually participate back into Smyrna, into the tax base. So that's something that we're very involved with. The other thing I want to point out for you is the TIF itself, they're asking for $14.5 million only for infrastructure. There is no vertical building that would be allowed under this TIF. There's no benefit to them for the buildings they build. This will cover the streets, the utilities, the red light, those type things. And that's all that we're asking for, is the simplicity of just the infrastructure being available to get TIF relief. I know with some of you, I think I was not able to be here at Property Committee last week. We were actually doing our council meeting that night, so I had to be in Smyrna. The other thing, I think there was some confusion about the development agreement. I'm sure you guys have never heard this before. Different jurisdictions call some things different. So what I think my friends at Murfreesboro called their development agreement, ours is actually the financed agreement, and that's what went through the IDB and was approved. It has the same information in there for you, all the caveats that we put into the TIF itself. In Smyrna, we use a development agreement when we get to the point of the plat design at the final plat, and that's what we use to make sure that we get the bonding on the roads and those kind of things. That's our development agreement. So our finance agreement, and I think the TIF that you saw from Murfreesboro, the development agreement, they're basically the same document, just a different name. So those now are in your packet, I understand, so you can take a look at those. Think of anything else I want to share with you, other than how excited we are about this project, and we hope to garner your support. Mr. Chairman, if you would like to have any questions for the developer or for myself.
I'll start with our committee here. I do have a question or two myself. Chairman Harris.
Okay, Brian, so you said you got a 6-to-1 ratio.
Correct.
Okay, so a lot of people don't know what a TIF is.
Sure.
But, so the TIF would start once they start working and getting things going, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so if we approve this, what is their date that they think they'll start construction?
Right now, we have a couple of, and I don't want to speak for the developer, but we have a couple of businesses that are ready to start moving dirt after the first of the year. Our goal is to have this property closed by the end of the year so that they can move forward. Am I speaking out of turn? So yes.
I've got an exhibit.
Right.
Okay. But go ahead.
Well, you know where we're concerned.
Absolutely, and I will tell
the
you.
project that we're concerned about, so that didn't work out. So we want to make sure that if we do something like this, that it's going to be construction and going to be going forward, because what's going on at 1 College Street has got a lot of us concerned.
Well, and that was in our mind as well. That's the reason we structured our TIF the way we did. Two things that I would remind you of: there's no buildings or anything on this property that's going to be torn down. There's no rubble that would be left. This is raw land today, and it could stay that way if they don't start anything. We do have a mechanism inside the TIF in that finance agreement that if work is not started by 2027, no matter when the TIF starts, the TIF would go away. It's also, on the backside, it's collared from the standpoint if let's say the interest rates go crazy and they say, well, we're going to wait a year or we're going to wait 2 years to do something. The other side of that is it's got a 20-year collar on it. So if the work's not completed within the 20 years, the TIF goes away. They only receive the benefit. Now, even though the question was about when the work starts, the tax on that baseline starts after closing, just like any other sale. So where we are getting zero today, the county and the town would both receive real estate tax on this at that sale price starting immediately.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a relevant question, are there clawbacks along the lines of the different milestones? You know, for example, the Murfreesboro one has a number of milestones in it. Describe, to follow up on Chairman Harris's point, the milestones in this agreement and what the effect of not meeting them would be.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about, because I think, again, I say a TIF is a TIF, but each project has to stand on its own merit, and each project is different. Because this one, what we've done is we've put a start date. If they don't accomplish that start date by 2027, then the TIF goes away. They don't get anything in the TIF until we take the baseline and they add value to the property. So if they don't add value for 3 years, then they don't get anything. We're still garnering the tax off of the baseline, and that's all that we would do on any raw land property.
So they start by the start date. They do nothing for 10 years. What's the effect?
The effect is they won't be getting anything back because
I mean, the
they're
property
only
is
at the
still
baseline.
sitting there then.
The TIF would still sit there, but there would be nothing, there would be no dollars going to them. They'd have no, and then at the end of, they've got a 20-year build out. If we go to, to the 3rd year and they get started, they'll only receive the benefit as the value goes up, and that's the whole baseline of the TIF.
Right.
Now, again, keep in mind, this is raw property that's been sitting there for 30 years. They're not going to be, again, demolishing buildings and those kind of things, creating the eyesore that you're talking about, that we all know about. This is a kind of a different animal here because it's raw land.
So I'm hearing there's not milestones other than its start date.
Well, there's milestones from the start date, and there's milestones from the actual advantage of the TIF in that they have to do something, they have to physically do the work to get the benefit.
I'm Jim Murphy, and I represent the developer. In this agreement, there is currently, in the financing funding agreement, there's a start date for the first phase. This is a multi-phase project. What the funding agreement contemplates is that when the city is ready to do its development agreement, which Mr. Hercules described as the agreement they do with each project to require, identify the infrastructure that's going to be completed and provide for bonding and security to make sure that infrastructure is completed. That development agreement will include the start date and a completion date. And so that development agreement will basically require a completion of the infrastructure. If that completion date is not met, then the county or the town can terminate the TIF at that point.
How far out is the completion date?
It's not determined yet. It will be determined
Could
by
it be 20 years?
Well, if the town will let it be 20 years, I'm pretty confident that they're not going to give us 20 years to complete.
I'm exaggerating, and I'm sorry.
No, but I mean, it's going to be determined by the town. And again, it's going to be determined when they've got an idea of what the infrastructure in that phase will need to be. And then the other thing, as Brian pointed out, they don't get any incentive if they don't build the vertical construction, because if they put in the infrastructure but they don't build the vertical improvements, there won't be any incremental taxes to pay any incentive. There's no upfront incentive here. This is an incentive that's paid when the infrastructure is complete.
So the question that comes to mind is, how far along is this project?
Well, this project is at the point.
I mean, here's where I'm eventually heading with that. Okay, there's no agreements in place right now. Haven't heard anything about financing, funding, anything along those lines. There's a really cool presentation by Younger that's got all kinds of economic development in it that, as an aside, makes me wonder why, if it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, you need a TIF. But we'll set that aside. I'm trying to figure out how far along is this. I understand what you just told me, but the timelines and the investment calculations, projections of economic growth by Younger had to be based on something, and that's the basis on which it's being sold, as I understand it. And I'm not understanding at this point where the Younger analysis ties into what I'm hearing, which is, well, at some point, you know, this date will be inserted and there'll be a start date and there'll be an end date, and, you know, maybe over the next 10 years this thing will get going, whereas Mr. Hercules just told us he could have sold it several times and it'll be on the tax rolls. And I'm trying to figure out kind of that analysis. You see where I'm headed with that?
I understand what your question is, and I'll try to answer it. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I think I understand your question. If I don't, you can ask me a follow-up question. So first, I think the Younger report anticipates build out to be completed for the whole project in 27 or 28. I think that's their estimated time. Obviously, at this point, my client has not acquired the property, and in order to do that, they've got to look at, you know, one, whether the TIF is going to be approved or not. So that's a condition for them to buy the property, is having the TIF increment in place, because if the TIF increment financing isn't in place, the project doesn't pencil to work for them. And so that's why this is a critical first step. They don't have their financing in place because they've got plenty of commitment, you know, or letters of interest, but they don't have a commitment because they can't get the commitment until they've gone much further into the development of their construction plans. All of these things have to be tied together, and having the TIF in place to be able to go forward is a critical first step that they've got to get in place to be able to make the project work. Now, as far as the risk to the county, if you approve this now and it doesn't materialize, first, as we pointed out, they don't get any increment until the infrastructure in each phase is completed. So there is no loss of tax revenue to the county while they're building the infrastructure. The increment goes to the IDB after the infrastructure is complete. Second, if the developer doesn't build the improvements, there is no increment. And so if there is no increment, if they don't generate the tax revenue that's projected in the Younger study, it's at the developer's risk. If the developer doesn't have sufficient increment, if the taxes aren't sufficient to pay to reimburse them for the infrastructure that they've built, then the developer has no recourse against the IDB, the county, or the town. It has to eat those costs itself because it didn't develop enough increment. So the developer is extremely incentivized to build the infrastructure and build the vertical development, because otherwise, if they don't have the increment sufficient to pay their, to reimburse them, then they have to eat that cost.
So they lose the TIF. They keep the property.
They would own the property. That's correct, and then they would have to find a way to sell it, and to a developer, as Mr. Hercules pointed out, to another developer that would be interested in doing the same development, because that's what the zoning provides. Now, I would suspect, again, the economic conditions may change, but I wouldn't be surprised if this deal, if the developer didn't perform, then the new developer would come in and ask for a TIF for their development. Because again, if they don't meet the deadline, the commencement date deadline in the financing agreement, the town and the county can cancel the TIF. And that's different from East College. East College didn't have a cancellation provision in it. And that's one of the things that has changed since that project came along, was it specifically contained, the plan specifically contains a cancellation provision, so that if what happens there happened here, the town and the county would have the ability to say, okay, we're canceling you, and the new developer would have to come back and start over.
Well, since you brought up College Street, here's one of the concerns I have. Number one, I know Brian very well. So Brian's behind this, and I take his word on a lot of things. But here's what I have a problem with. You just said that they have not necessarily got financing together.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the problem that we had with the other TIF, is they kept losing their financing ability. So the TIF doesn't start until construction starts, correct?
Actually, here, the increment, it's a reimbursement TIF, okay? So this one is one where it actually doesn't start until they've completed the infrastructure, okay? So it's a true reimbursement. They have to do the work before they get 1 penny in reimbursement from TIF funds.
Understand. But my question is, you can't do what you're wanting to do and build unless you got financing available. So you're saying that the banks are telling you that it's going to be based on the TIF opportunity?
They want to see the total capital stack.
Right.
Okay, and the TIF is part of that.
So we say no, your project's gone.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Question you asked about, I made the comment about that we could have sold this property 10 times, and I will stay with that comment, but it would have been 10 projects, it would have been 3,000 to 4,000 apartments, and we did not want apartments for many reasons. One is we wanted this project not only to give us real estate tax, we also wanted it to generate hotel, motel, and retail tax. Our vision was not to put more apartments, plus, you know, we know the constraints that the county and the town both enjoy from the standpoint of our schools and stuff. To add more families and more places for people to live, it's great to do, but that wasn't the right place for it. So when I say we could have sold the property, we could have sold it to apartments. That was not in our vision. Our vision was to make a project like this that brought a destination to our community.
Commissioner Pearson.
Does this property lay inside the county or inside the city limits of Smyrna? Is the city of Smyrna going to furnish the public safety requirements for this, the ambulance, the fire, the law enforcement? If it's such a good deal, why didn't y'all take it through the city?
We have to approve this TIF as well. We will be a portion of the TIF, and we've already taken ours last week through our workshop, and it'll be voted on Tuesday night, and it was moved forward with 100% participation from our council.
What was your portion?
It's the same as the tax rate. Our tax rate's, what, 52 and some change, and yours is, I forget what it is now, but proportionately, it's the same ratio.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dominic Zabriskie, and I'm with Equitable Property Company. Brian touched on the vision, of which I'd like to share with you this evening. This is a plan that's fully approved the first quarter of this year, something that we've worked about almost 18 months now on. And really the vision, it was a collaboration between city planning and our landscape architecture and planning company who's done McEwen Town Center and Berry Farms and a number of other walkable retail office environments within Middle Tennessee. This is our team, Equitable, as well as Lowen Associates, who's based in Nashville and has done multiple projects within Rutherford County. Fulmer and Lucas is the engineer, and then KVD is our landscape architect. Myself, along with Land Elliott, are kind of the primary developers with Equitable. We have experience in 19 states and over $600 million worth of development activity over the last 20 years. This is kind of a vision sheet of the project, similar projects within some of them that Kaiser Vogren has developed, as well as others that we've taken inspiration from. Here's a couple more images. We have pretty stringent architectural and design guidelines within these within this design, so there'll be, you know, the basis on which Smyrna's building and planning departments require, and then another level of oversight within, kind of like an HOA, but it's a property management kind of control what the overall building design and landscaping components are for the whole entire project, so that there's consistency and just a higher level of finish across the project. This is the site plan that's currently envisioned. We talk about, let's go to phasing. So you ask about phasing. The Area 1 fronts Sam Ridley Boulevard, and within this area we have interest 2 and 3 times across each parcel. This is a parcel that we don't own the property yet, but we have signed and executed leases with several of these tenants, as well as 3rd and 4th round negotiations with others. So this is upon closing on the property, this is the first area in which we'll get started. I want to, because the property is so large, there's over 300,000 square feet of material that has to be moved to balance the site. So we're working west to east, and within that first quadrant, we're hoping to deliver pads to them probably 3rd quarter of 2024, and that means probably 12 months of vertical construction. So that means we're delivering the first openings, like grand openings for Area 1 will be in 2025. And then in Area 2, once we get, if you see the blue area, that's a lower point that's going to that requires a substantial amount of fill. You can kind of see the depth of that property is far below the roadway. So in that area, there's a substantial amount of fill. But that's our second area that we'd like to develop. We're in conversations, or actually second, third round negotiations with the grocery store, as well as tenants for both of the rest of the lots along Sam Ridley. And then in Area 3, that's more of our town center boulevard with the surface parking behind. And because of the mixed use component of that area, it's a little bit longer vertical construction period. So that delivery is probably going to more likely be 2026, just because we've got the 75 residential condominium units over retail, as well as a hotel that kind of books in the boulevard there with the amphitheater behind it. And then Area 4 is where we're targeting medical office users. We've had multiple conversations with a variety of, whether it's orthopedic groups or other healthcare providers within the market. I know that Murfreesboro's gotten a lot of interest, and Smyrna's on that same path of interest for healthcare providers. And then behind it, there's another hotel behind the two office buildings. In total, there's 280,000 square feet of retail entitlements. We've got 245,000 square feet of office space, 240 hotel rooms, and 75 residential condominium units. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on, you talk about what this TIF is going to fund and actually pay for. So the two areas on the on-site improvements are the red areas, which are public right-of-way, and then primary site utilities, so that's water, sewer, gas, and electric. And then the green areas are public open space, as well as some stormwater detention areas. There's also a substantial amount of off-site improvements. Brian mentioned our work with TDOT, which has been 12 months in the works. We've finally gotten approval for TDOT, and we're working on the intersection design currently. But this is looking at the intersection of Motlow Boulevard and Sam Ridley Boulevard, or Sam Ridley Parkway. This light, we're going to have to extend the turn lane that turns left onto Motlow College Boulevard, as well as realign pretty much every lane within this intersection and extend the median. This is looking at the site north. If you're on Sam Ridley Boulevard, this is kind of where the main entrance is going to be, and the new red light is going to be. And this is the design for that red light intersection. And then the third component of the off-site improvements is adding a lane coming from is it Highway 41, South Lowry? So you kind of see, if you see the dark areas on that bridge, we're actually going to have to add a lane to widen that to connect to the new intersection to our site. So there's substantial both on-site and off-site public infrastructure that's going to be required for this project. And this is kind of a summary. Brian touched on the benefit to cost ratio. It's right at 6-to-1. So for every dollar of TIF funding that we realize, Younger's projecting $6 in benefit to the city and the county. But this is kind of a summary of the TIF financing, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Can you go back to the slide on Area 1, 2, and 3?
Sure.
Okay, Area 1, how much square foot are we looking at as far as retail services in that first area?
So at the new intersection, starting on the right side, that new intersection, there's 4 buildings that total 30,000 square feet. Each one of those 4 buildings there in that pod is 7,500 square feet.
So is that going to be subdivided, or is that, are you just
They're
trying to get?
multi-tenant, so they're multi-tenant buildings in that usually restaurants are 35 to 5,000 square feet. So the idea is it's one portion of it's going to be a restaurant, and the other portion is probably going to be soft goods or like a clothing store or sports equipment.
Which phase is where you're going to build first floor shops, second floor, third floor?
That's area 3. So area 3 is the bulk of the vertical construction. If you'll go back and look, that's the bulk of where the surface lot. That surface lot currently is 16 feet above grade, and the rock is 2 inches below the topsoil. I mean, the bulk of the entire site needs to be blasted. And also there's 13 sinkholes on the property that would have to be remediated. So that's where the front, if you look at the frontage, see how almost at curb level along the frontage of Sam Ridley is pretty manageable to deliver pad-ready sites. It's the rise in the rock foundation that's going to take a little bit longer to get the utilities in back there. And then the vertical construction, rebuilding a 4-story building versus a single-story building along the Town Center Boulevard area. But there's just a lot more coordination for the Area 3, and it's also the bulk of the development. We are the furthest down the road with the outlots, just because there's no space available along Sam Ridley Boulevard. There's probably 2 vacancies. There's just no vacancy on Sam Ridley Boulevard. We're talking to tenants that are in Century Farms or Franklin that are looking to move to Rutherford County because they see all the zip codes, Rutherford County zip codes, that are coming and spending money in their store in Davison or Williamson County, and say, okay, we need to be here to service our customers in this market. And they can't find space along Sam Ridley Boulevard or even the Avenue. The vacancy is just not there. But it's identifying the right tenant mix for all them to be successful. It's not nail salons and tobacco stores and things like that. It's being very selective on who the tenants are, that they have the right synergy to generate the right foot traffic. This is an experience. We want people to park once and go to multiple stores, sit down to eat dinner, do some shopping, maybe grab groceries on the way home, or it could even be if you're waiting for a doctor's appointment. I mean, it's that the mixed use component really adds to be able to add synergy between tenants.
Well, 2 things. Number 1, when you talk about rock, welcome to Rutherford County.
Yeah.
Number 2, one of the things I am extremely concerned with, and you kind of answered the question, and I'll bring this back to you, Brian, is something that we're fully invested in. We got to have, it's kind of like when we give tax abatements, when we give it to them, we want high income jobs. Well, this is, we want higher income shops so that we be able to have the money, to make. You made a good point, like, I don't want to say it, you said it, nail salon.
Yep.
You said that, I didn't. But
Sure.
Anyway.
In the finance,
Yep.
there is a list of things that
Yep.
cannot go in there.
Yep.
That's good.
Brian, you need to speak to the microphone.
What I was saying is in the finance agreement, again, that's quasi our development agreement from the way you're looking at it. There's a list of things that cannot go in there. It can't be a car lot. It can't be car repairs. It can't be rentals. It can't be, that was high on our list. Again, I go back to the vision was what we wanted this to be, and it is that next level of shopping, dining, and experience for Smyrna.
Well, I'm associated with this type of development. So there's a development in West Haven in Franklin, Tennessee, that I did a lot of work on, and I see your vision on that, and it's very successful. So But I'm also concerned when you said there's a lot of site work to do. Are you aware that there's not a lot of dirt to get around here?
The good news of that, the good and bad news of that, is there's not a lot of we don't need a lot of topsoil, right? So there is we're working with, and Brian, thanks to Brian, he's connected us with probably one of the most successful site and material companies maybe in the southeast that we're working with, but it's a big hurdle for us. Just the utilities. So there's areas where the storm drainage on the portion of phase 1 to get to that pond, there's areas where that storm drainage is 15 feet underground. So that means there are depths we're going to have to blast nearly 20. You have to overblast. So if you're 15 feet in the ground, you have to blast 20 to 25 feet. So it's conversations we're having now. But the good news is it's all usable material for building pads and parking lots and things like that. So the topsoil, we're going to have to import topsoil, but a lot of the compactable material, we're hoping to use what's on site. Yeah. You mentioned just one other, you talked about jobs and job creation, and one of the things we're interested with healthcare is typically those jobs are higher paying jobs on the office component. This is Younger's projection, but permanent jobs on site are over 1,800 new jobs with wages of this is $63 million in wages annually. The construction, just the one-time impact for construction is $215 million worth of construction investment with over 1,600 jobs. Now, these aren't permanent jobs, but these are jobs during the construction phase. It's $92 million in wages. So just to touch on that point.
I don't see anybody from our committee. I'm kind of getting blocked off here a little bit, but I've got a comment or two I'd like to make.
Let's see, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you wanted to wait or no.
No, go ahead. I didn't. Like I said, I was getting blocked off, so
I didn't know who
please
was
go
going to
ahead.
go first. I'm happy to let you.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Stewart's Landing mixed-use development projections, Rutherford County tax summary, and this is showing me as this thing gets built out, basically along the lines of the 1 through 4, you're looking at basically $25 million in additional tax revenues over 20 years for Rutherford County. But the county only gets $5 million of that over the 20 years, which is $261,000 per year to the county. Is that accurate? Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm looking at the it says the ultimate net new tax incremental assessed value, et cetera, $25 million in additional tax revenues over 20 years. And the county gets $5 million, which is a 21% allocated to debt service. Oh, okay.
What page are you on the Younger report?
Younger, it's page 8, or if you want to go to the
Got page 8.
the IDB, I think it's page 3.
So $5 million on the net incremental tax.
Yep. And then the county gets $5 million. That's for the debt service, and then $261,000 per year to the county is divided by 20, basically.
Roughly, that's right. That sounds right.
Okay.
That sounds right, yeah.
And I just want to clarify that difference between the $25 million and the $5 million goes to pay for the infrastructure costs we talked about for the developers, right?
$5 million is what the county gets to pay its debt service. The $5 million over 20 years is what the county gets
To pay its debt service, yes. The 21%. Right. And the difference between that 25 and that 5, or about $20 million, goes,
19,349.
yep, goes to the infrastructure projects for the developers. Okay.
And at a present value is 10 million, 10.5 million.
Okay. And according to that younger study, this thing has a huge impact.
Correct.
Okay.
The younger study calculates all the impacts, not just property tax.
Right. For example, there's $83 million in sales tax over the 20 years, that kind of thing. And any idea how much of that the county gets?
I don't know the split, so I don't know. What was the question? Half of all sales tax goes to education, and then the other half would go to the jurisdiction it's collected in, which would be Smyrna.
And that assumes it's fully built out in accordance with that schedule, on that timeline, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay. And so if the project, this is the kind of the head scratcher to me. Okay, if the project is generating those kind of sales tax numbers and doing that well, why is there a government subsidy that's even needed here? And
Infrastructure costs.
the follow-on is, how much due diligence has there been to understand why this deal depends on this 20-some-odd million dollar, or why does it depend on the TIF? I'm just not understanding, if this is such a great deal, okay, and you've got a $215 million total capital investment, okay, why does it depend on this TIF?
Because of the extraordinary infrastructure costs that are required. Asking a developer to provide open space, you're asking a developer to provide significant off-site road improvements, and on-site road improvements are very costly because of the fact that this property has the conditions that were described. So, given a choice, a developer is going to go somewhere where it's easier to develop.
The example I can give is, and this is one of the reasons we've worked with the city for so long to give them a plan that they want to see delivered, is you look up and down Sam Ridley, right? And I think if this project was viable without this type of support, it would likely already have been built in the last real estate cycle, right? And you look at just down the street at the intersection of Old Nashville Highway and Sam Ridley, it's mainly just shop space, strip centers and shop space and out parcels, right? So there's not a lot of infrastructure. You're delivering a curb cut and a parking lot and a pad for a fast food restaurant. Whereas we've got the turn lanes and the signals that TDOT's requiring for this size of a development hasn't been required to a private developer on Sam Ridley ever. To deliver this type of project, these are requirements that TDOT won't issue a permit on the intersection or the stoplight without these improvements. This isn't something we have asked to build. This is something TDOT's come to us and said is required. And it's also, these tenants are asking for signalization and turn lanes and safe pedestrian access that require a certain level of infrastructure and design that's not economically viable. It would be, I think, the city's fear is it's going to be another, if it's not an apartment building, it's another strip center. Is it another big box? Is it a Lowe's? And, Lowe's is there, Home Depot, that's probably more feasible economically. One of the reasons we reached out to Brian was on some of the tenants that we were targeting, there was such a large rent discrepancy on where we needed to be in order to cover the enormous construction costs. Construction costs have gone up 20% year over year since COVID, and what the rents that they're able to pay. And I think what you're seeing in terms of viability of the payback are sales tax collections. The bulk of the payback is in sales tax collections. As a developer, we don't participate in the sales volumes of the retail. We are competing against what they can pay in the strip center do they go to Nolensville? Where are they going to service these zip codes where their customers are based? We're competing with tenants in Century Farms. Do we lose? There's a couple deals that we would like to have, but that we've already been told, well, we've already signed with Century Farms. And Century Farms has some type of public support as well. So it's a tug and pull dynamic in terms of the type of build out of infrastructure that the tenants require, and then the rents that they're able to pay or willing to pay, because they've got other places they could go. If they want to open 3 stores in Middle Tennessee, this is one site that they're looking at.
If I could ask one other quick question. The interest rates, if they continue to move up, okay, what's the sensitivity analysis look like? If interest rates move up, there's no clawback. What's the scenario we're looking at? I mean,
Well, the good and the bad of it is there's 6 to 12 months of site work and infrastructure. It's even just the off-site improvements. TDOT's so slow in what they do. A lot of our timelines are going to be dictated by the constructability of the intersection as much as it is with what our timelines are. But if you look at the forecast for whether it's just interest, the yield curve in general, we're hopeful that towards the end of next year, rates will come down a little bit. Yeah, they may go up another in the interim, but we've got 6 to 12 months of site work that we're focused on funding first. And then and this kind of goes back to the whole capitalization. As costs move and interest rates move, so does our capitalization stack. So it's dependent on the TIF as well as interest rates, construction costs, as a number of things. But in the near term, we're focused on getting the site and infrastructure in to be able to be eligible for the TIF, at which point we're hopeful that rates will actually come down instead of go up further.
Thank you very much.
I'm kind of having a hard time seeing the committee, but if anybody wants to speak up, not all. I've got a point or two I want to make and a couple of questions I want to ask. First, the developers that are working on this project, where are they based?
We're both live in Middle Tennessee and based in Nashville.
Okay. One thing you may or may not be aware of, pretty sure you are aware of this, but Rutherford County has kind of been hamstrung as far as how we can charge impact fees, unlike Smyrna, Murfreesboro, any other municipality in this state, and many other counties. And it just frustrates me to no end that developers like this fight us at the state level with our state legislators to deny us the ability to defer something besides property tax to development tax. And to have you guys come and ask me for $20 million when I just gave a 26-cent tax hike to the people that I represent, that's a hard sell. Like I said, it frustrates me to no end. Now, having said that, maybe I'll get my steam out over that, maybe not, but I've looked at this, and I looked at the practical end of it. This property is not on the tax rolls. That's why I'm personally looking favorably at it because of that. Now, what I would like from you your development friends is to help us. If you expect us to help you, we need help at our legislative level here in this state to get a development tax equity going for our county. And you guys come to me and you're asking for money and a dole out. And like I said, you know where that money's coming from? It's coming from these people we were talking about earlier that are on frozen income. And that's the money that I'm spending. That's why I get so hot under the collar about this when I look at these guys. Well, how much money are you going to make on this? You know, I say you're going to be well above our income level for getting a tax deferment. But those are the people that I'm looking out for.
I would say two things to that. Is one, I grew up in Woodbury and has seen Rutherford County grow for the 44 years of my career. My sister is a kindergarten teacher at Siegel Elementary. I, as a developer, has never come out against impact fees, particularly when it supports education. And here's why. You know why home values and real estate values are so high in Williamson County? Because of the schools. If you support education, you support property values, and we all benefit through increased property values. I will say, yes, I agree. We're paying in this, if developed in this scenario, we're paying the city of Smyrna $3.8 million in development impact fees. That's road impact, public safety, all the things that they'll have to cover. The only thing we're paying Rutherford County is under $200,000 of fees on the residential. So all I can say is I hear you. I hear you.
And I appreciate what you had to say. And like I said, I'm not saying this is something I would not support because of that, but what I'm making my plea for is help. I mean, if your company were to write to our state legislators and say, hey, you know, this is to me, it's about education and having a revenue source other than property tax. And I appreciate what you had to say. Thank you.
And you know, I think the other point, and I know you said something about the sales tax, there's nothing in this TIF that takes that away. We will be receiving that as soon as these stores open. We will begin to garner those dollars, and the county will, you know, benefit just as the town will. You know, while we're asking for some forgiveness on the property tax through the TIF until we get the infrastructure paid back, there are other taxes we'll all enjoy that's, again, past that zero base of the real estate tax. It's additional taxes, and that really became the focus of who and why Smyrna wanted this project to be what it is.
Understand. Anybody else from the committee have any questions or any further discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I think this needs to go through the full commission, so I'm going to make a motion to approve this TIF and send to the commission, full commission.
I have a motion to approve the TIF and forward to the full commission.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Sereno. Discussion. Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
No.
Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner Piercy?
No.
Commissioner P?
Say yes. That's subject to change at the full commission.
Motion fails.
Motion passed, did it not?
Motion fails. 3-3 tie.
We are short one. Okay. Don't think that we're going to come up with a decision unless someone is willing to make a different motion or a change.
I'd like to make a motion to send this to the full commission without a recommendation.
Have a motion to send to the full commission without a recommendation.
Yes.
Second. Any discussion? Call the roll, Mark.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
No.
Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner Piercy?
No.
Commissioner P?
I'm going to say yes and leave it at a tie, and then I've got a question. If this fails, what is their option?
If this fails, that would not go on the budget committee's portion of the commission agenda, and then any commissioner could bring this up under other business per the commission rules. That would be, I'm not the parliamentarian, but that would be my recollection.
That was kind of my thoughts, and that's why I went ahead and voted where I did that last one. Any other comments from anybody on the committee? Not. It sounds like a deadlock here, but know that it can be brought up on the floor of the full commission. We're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is we need some signature approvals. That's item 18 and 19. Resolution for a facsimile signature for the Rutherford County payroll account, and then a resolution for a facsimile for the Rutherford County warrant account. And this is due, let's see, Sheila Bratton was elected chairman of the Board of Education.
Yes, these changes are for both the accounts, one being our payroll account, the other being our warrant or accounts payable account. And this is due to the schools choosing a new chairman. And per state law, that school board chairman has to be a signer on the checks. We did look and see if we could just do the director of schools and the finance director every year just because it would save this. Me and Mark both looked at that in TCA, but TCA code does say the school board chairman. So that's the reason for this change.
Do we need to do these separately? Can we do
If we could do these separately since we have, since they're separate items.
Okay. Item 18 then, the resolution for the facsimile for the Rutherford County payroll account, and that's for, again, the school.
That's the only signer we're changing is the old school board chairman, Tammy Sharp, to the new school board chairman, Sheila Bratton.
Okay, do I hear a motion? Guys, we're going to have to approve this one way or the other. So,
Motion to approve this?
Second.
Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner Sereno. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, next resolution is a facsimile for the Rutherford County warrant account. And same situation. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion. Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have two items under other business. First one, the Tennessee Department of Transportation acquisition of property. This got to us late, so while we're seeing it under other business, didn't have a chance to get it posted in time. Michael, you want to explain that one, please?
Yes, this acquisition is due to the expansion or future expansion of Thompson Lane. So the state is requesting acquisition of this small portion of property. After talking with the schools, it's due to additional turn lane and easements there, and you can see they're paying us approximately a little less than $60,000 for that. You can see that on your iPad, but it's for right there at the area where there's an EMS station. I believe that's Thompson, and then you have the middle school right there. It's for acquiring parcels right there, or portions of parcels right there on Thompson Lane.
Any questions for Finance Director? Marino, you saw this. No, you're not on Health and Ed this time. I'm sorry.
No.
On property management.
It went through property management. It was a
Property management.
Okay.
So, and
y'all
one
both
thing I
saw it.
want to add is this is county-owned property. So that's one of the reasons it went through property management, but also this money will be deposited in the county general fund since it is county-owned land, just in case for the record there.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? And a second. Any further discussion? Call roll on this one, Mark.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Finally, we have a finance department position reclassification requested. And something I'll mention is this is actually in the budget and kind of anticipated. Anyway, Michael, if you want to explain.
So, and the reason this is another business, and I apologize for it being that way, is I was informed earlier this week, after the agenda went out last Friday, that I was going to have an employee who could be out potentially up to 2 months or greater. She'll be on FMLA leave. And with that being said, we'll make up the difference in-house, and we have a really good staff there. However, during the budget process this year, I did budget for a grade promotion for one of the employees, and I had planned on doing that mid-year, maybe December, January. However, with this one person gonna be out for 2 months or greater due to surgery, I'm making a request to make this grade change a couple months sooner to put the additional duties off on this employee. Like I said, I've already budgeted for this year. It's just happening about a month or two sooner than I'd planned on. So it would be a grade change for position 102242, and that would go from a grade 23 to a grade 27. It'd go from an accounting specialist to an accounting generalist.
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve. Second, Commissioner Piercy. Any discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy? Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Guys, anything else? We're adjourned.